You good?
Yeah.
All right, guys. So the easy part of the lymphatic system is understanding how does the lymphatic system work. So we know we have lymph vessels. They flow in a circular motion, or do they go one direction?
One direction.
One direction, just like the old band. Wasn't that a band? Right. Yeah, one direction. And they all eventually drain into what? Where do they drain into? What part of the circulatory system? The arterial or the venous?
Venous.
Venous, because they go to the subclavian veins, which then leads to the vena cava. That's the venous system. Okay, it's one-way flow. What's flowing in the lymphatic system? What's moving around?
Extra fluid.
Lymph. It's lymph. It's pulling the fluid from the tissues, but once it gets in that lymphatic system, we call it lymph. Okay. The functions we see here: fluid balance, because it's pulling off extra fluid. What's the other functions?
Absorption of fat.
So fat gets absorbed, which we didn't even talk about yet, right? Because we'll get into that in the digestive system, where it's actually the lymph nodes, that lymphatic system is attached to the digestive system, and it sucks up the fat from what you eat. And it's obviously involved in the immune system as well. So fluid balance, fat absorption, and immune system. Okay. There we go. Here. Okay, we already said where they drain into. So both of your legs drain into where? Left or right subclavian vein?
Right. Go left.
They both drain into the left. The only things that drain into the right subclavian vein are your right arm, upper part of your body. That's it. Okay. All right, let's get into thymus gland. What happens in the thymus gland? What cells get trained in the thymus gland?
T.
Yeah, T lymphocytes. They get trained in the actual thymus gland. Good. That's the big thing that's occurring. What's unique about the thymus gland? It starts off big, and then as you become an adult, it shrinks. Because what happens when you're a child? You develop immunity as a child. Yes, absolutely. That's the only time we need it. All right. So we see here the actual lymph nodes. What lives in the lymph nodes? That's a silly question, right? What lives in there? No. Now we're getting to that. Lymphocytes, well, there you go. Duh. Lymphocytes live in the actual lymph nodes, and they live in that place called the germinal centers. That's the actual barracks where they hang out at, where the actual lymphocytes live. And then the cancer thing, does cancer start in the lymph nodes? What's the relation to cancer? Why do we remove the lymph nodes when someone has cancer? To prevent the spread of the cancer. So it's not that it starts there, but if you see it in the lymph nodes, it means it has spread. That's what it means. Okay, good. Understand your tonsils and your adenoids. Those are basically, think of them like big lymph nodes. That's what they are. That's why we don't want to remove them necessarily. And they're back in the back of the throat. We don't need to get any more on that. Now the spleen, where is it located? Left upper quadrant of the abdomen. Good. And why do we want to have a spleen again? Store blood, right? Good. It also breaks down old red blood cells. It makes blood cells, but only when you're a baby. And we already said all that. And obviously has immune functions as well related to that. What are we worried about if let's say your kid's riding a bike, what can happen to the spleen?
Rupture.
It can rupture because it's very vascular, as we said. There's lots of blood flow going to it. So we want to monitor. Anytime you see someone has an injury at the left upper quadrant of the abdomen, they're going to look to see if they have ruptured their spleen or not. All right. What are your first lines of defense? What's your first line of defense?
Mucus.
Right. Physical barriers, right, such as skin and mucous membranes. Good. How do mucous membranes work? They trap the actual invader. Good. And then we have non-specific and specific, which we'll get into. Non-specific would be just cells going around eating things that don't belong. It's those proteins that we'll get to, inflammation, fever, all this stuff. So let's get into it. So phagocytosis means what? I just said it. Cells are just eating stuff that doesn't belong there, whether it be bacteria or whatever. Now, we see chemotaxis is what? What is that? What's going on with that?
Sending signals.
It's a distress signal, right? And what comes to the rescue when chemotaxis occurs?
Neutrophils.
Neutrophils and natural killer cells come to the rescue.
Okay.
What specific cell is releasing this? We already said one of the lymphocytes. Which one is it? One of the T lymphocytes sends chemotaxis. The helper. It's the helper. I'm jumping ahead. You guys need to put this all in your notes together. It's kind of scattered around in the chapter here. So we see chemotaxis is secreted by the helper T cell, and it calls in neutrophils and natural killer cells. It's the distress signal, so it's from the helper T cells. Okay, I just wanted to make that connection right there. Interferons are chemotaxis that are specific to what? Viral
Virus.
infections. Yes, absolutely. So they're specific for viral infections. So they're distress when you're under attack from a virus. And then we have those natural killer cells. Well, we don't need to know a ton about them. They can kill cells in many different ways. That's it, period. They come to the rescue when that chemotaxis comes in. The membrane attack complex. Remember, it's a group of proteins that does what to a bacteria? They puncture a hole, and then what happens?
H2O.
Salt
Sodium.
water rush in, and the cell goes
Boom.
boom. There you go. He doesn't ever forget that. There you go. Signs of inflammation are pain, redness, or what do you call it? Erythema, right? And heat and swelling. Okay, what's another name for swelling? Edema. Good. And if I see the word purulent, what's that a name for?
Pus.
Pus. Okay, good. And that may indicate what? Infection. Good. All right. Fever. What's the first thing that's secreted? Pyrogen. Pyrogen. Think pyromaniac, fever, hot. And then after that, we have the next substance is prostaglandin. So pyrogen, prostaglandin, fever goes up. But why is fever important? What does it do? Stops the pathogen from doing what?
Reproducing.
It's too hot to reproduce. Good. That's it, guys. I'm breaking it down as simple as I possibly can for you. Now, if I were to say, well, we'll skip past that for now. Well, let's just go ahead and connect it. Let's do that B cell thing. So, humoral immunity. I almost called him a Londi over here. He's not a Londi. Prince, humoral immunity involves which cells?
B cell.
Oh, I'm asking Prince over here.
My bad.
It's okay. You got that, Prince? So humoral is B cells. And B cells secrete what? What do they make? They make antibodies. What's another name for antibodies? Immunoglobulin. Let's do it again. Humoral is what cells?
B.
B cells. And what do B cells make?
Antibodies.
Antibodies. And what's another name for antibodies? Immunoglobulin. Just like that. Okay, good. So we said B cells, T cells. Where are these T cells again? Where do they get trained at? Thymus gland. Where do B cells get trained at? In the bone. B for bone. Okay, different types of immunoglobulin. Which one is involved in milk? IgA. Okay, which one is for a blood transfusion reaction? IgM. And allergic reaction?
IgE.
IgE, good. And what's another name for allergic reaction? Hypersensitivity, good. And which one's most abundant? We have too many what?
IgG.
Too many G's, right? So it's the most abundant. It's also bacteria infections. Now, types of immunity. Make sure you guys get this. If it involves a needle, it's what type of immunity? Artificial. Good. If it's occurring naturally, it's natural, right? Duh. If your body's actually making the antibodies, what type is it?
Artificial active.
It's active immunity. You're actively making the antibodies. If you're just given the antibodies, it's what?
Passive.
Passive. So if your body makes it, it's active. If you are just given the antibodies, it is passive. If it involves a needle, it's artificial. If it's natural, well, it's natural, duh. There we go. So what would be the example of, what is breastfeeding then?
Natural.
Is it natural? Yep. Is there a needle involved?
No.
No? Okay, good. And is the baby making antibodies?
No.
No, they're
So
just
it's passive.
given the antibodies. So that would be natural passive immunity. Which one of those would be a vaccination?
Active.
So artificial,
Active.
active. Good. What would be someone sneezes in my face?
Natural active.
Natural, active. So it's natural that they sneeze in my face. It's gross, but it's still natural, right? But I'm actually making antibodies against it. And what was the last one? Let's see. What did I skip here? Artificial passive. What would that be? What's going on there?
Getting needle but not making.
They're actually giving you immunoglobulin through an IV that involves a needle, right? Good. Okay. Which of the T cells, remember they're matured in the thymus gland, which one of them is specific to viruses? It's called cytotoxic. Which one remembers the intruder for future reference? The memory T cells. So what do the helpers do? They're the ones secreting what again? Oh, you guys forgot already.
Chemotaxis.
Thank you.
Chemotaxis.
They're the ones that secrete the chemotaxis that say, hey, neutrophils, natural killer cells, come to the rescue. Very good. And we did that. Did all that. Did that. And that's it.